Lightgun games, a forgotten joy that was at the peak of its popularity in the 90s. But what if, like me, you don't want to put a lot of time and effort into setting things up and just want a simple lightgun solution for modern displays? Well, the Wii Blaster may just be the solution. While I was in CEX, I happened to find a Wii Blaster for £7 secondhand. I also picked up a Wiimote and nunchuck, which was £23, and went and paid £6 online for a very, very cheap Wii sensor bar, meaning that I can connect this up to my PC and be playing games via Dolphin in minutes in glorious high definition. So how good was the Wiimote as a light gun, and what games are on the Wii to allow you to very quickly scratch that itch? We're taking a look at the top 12 Wii light gun games. So, kicking off this list, we have Nerf End Strike, and this is one of the few games on this list that is suitable for younger children. Now, the graphics are clean and vibrant, and within the game there's a whole host of fun unlockables. So, even though the game is pretty short, you'll actually really enjoy playing this multiple times. The visuals through Dolphin Emulator upscale really nicely to HD, and you'll find that this is a whole lot of fun, especially if you have 2 players. It's a simple, basic shooter, but like I said, if you've got young children, this is definitely one that people should take a look at. Gunblade NY and LA Machine Guns are 2 conversions of Sega Model 2 and Sega Model 3 games, respectively, for the Nintendo Wii. The action is absolutely frantic, and if, like me, you have fond memories of classic 90s arcades, you will feel right at home here. The only thing about this is the whole thing makes me a little bit sad that, in fact, we didn't get more classic Model 2 ports. Clearly the engine was built, and classic Model 3 games like The Lost World could have easily been converted. Similarly, things like Virtua Cop 2 could have made their way to the Wii system, and I think that would have been a great way to preserve and play these games on modern TVs. Still, if you like classic 90s machine gun shooters, you can't really go too far wrong with these. Yes, they'll be over pretty quickly, but in the meantime, you will have a great time. Into the top 10, and this one really took me by surprise. I only discovered this game recently. The game is Chicken Riot, and actually everything about this game screams budget, including the box art. But actually, when you play this game, you'll find it's a surprisingly deep and replayable experience. The basic premise is simply shooting down chickens, but there's a ton of golden eggs, mini things to collect, locks to unlock, and a load of replayability here. Again, this is another one that's suitable for younger children, so there's plenty to access and to enjoy here. So definitely don't let this one pass you by because it looks budget. It's a surprisingly complete, in-depth game. So this game needs no introduction. Call of Duty 4 revolutionized and popularized the first-person shooter. But actually, I picked this game up, and part of the reason that I even decided to make this list was because I started playing this as part of my Impossible ports and ended up really enjoying it. Yes, you're not going to be able to play it as accurately as with the original 360 or PS3 controllers, but actually the control scheme works surprisingly well with all of the free movement that you would expect. And whilst the visuals may be not as good as the 360 and PS3 versions, again, if you upscale them using Dolphin, they're perfectly respectable. And actually, this is a huge amount of fun. I think this is such a famous game and actually a really, really fresh and interesting way to play it. So don't discount this one. Give it a try. Of course, this extends also to the sequels, which retained the control scheme. Black Ops is equally a fun game, so whether you want to go with the modern warfare or the more traditional war Black Ops game, both of these are games you should check out. At number 8 is Sin and Punishment Star Successor. Now, this was a sequel to the Japanese-only and rather excellent Nintendo 64 game. Now, that has been converted and translated to English. If you're curious, I highly recommend you check out the translation because it is one of my favorite Nintendo 64 games. So when you see that this game is on the Wii, really exciting because this game absolutely suits the Wii Blaster down to the ground. Of course, you can use the nunchuck and the analog stick in order to move around, but then all of the shooting is done via the Wii Blaster, and the control scheme works perfectly. It's like it was built for this game and is hugely enjoyable, and the game is surprisingly long and deep. If you want a light gun fix but want a game that you can really get your teeth into, I highly recommend Sin and Punishment Star Successor. At number 7 is The House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return from Sega. Now, House of the Dead 2 originally came out on the Naomi arcade hardware and was converted to the Dreamcast. House of the Dead 3 utilized the Sega Chihiro arcade hardware and was released on the Xbox. And it's great that these games have both been ported over. Now, these are fairly bare bones ports. They're just ports of the Dreamcast and Xbox games respectively. However, House of the Dead 3 does have an extreme mode, which is pretty fun, but outside of that, this is pretty bare bones. And I think that's a little bit disappointing. These were fairly cheap ports, and whilst they're great games, it would have been great to see maybe some additional modes here. And another frustration, I think, for me is the lack of the House of the Dead 1, given that Model 2 Gunblade MY game came to the Wii, there's no reason they couldn't have made this a House of the Dead trilogy. Still, it's great to have these, and like I said, just great to be able to easily play these using the Wiimote. Up next is Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. Now, this is a light gun game built from the ground up for the Wii, and again, when it's upscaled, it looks really impressive. Now, this takes components of various Resident Evil games with a particularly memorable section from Resident Evil 3. You can see starting here, Resident Evil 0 is referenced, but actually, it's surprisingly, because it's built for console, it's a surprisingly deep experience. The whole campaign takes around 6 hours to complete. There's loads of unlockables, loads of weapons, loads of breakables, multiple routes. So this really is a far deeper experience than I think many thought. And if you want that deeper experience in that classic Resident Evil guise, then this is definitely one that you should take a look at, and one of the best on the system. Into the top 5, and we have Ghost Squad. Now, this was a game, another Sega game released in 2004 on the Chihiro Sega arcade platform, which was actually more similar to the Xbox, but this game actually is a lot more similar to the Virtua Cop Confidential Mission-esque games that are out there. But this wasn't just a simple port like House of the Dead 2 and 3. Sega actually took the time to add new modes to the game, different spawn points, different difficulty levels, and with 2 players, this is incredible fun, and probably the game that with 2 players I enjoyed the most of all the light gun experiences. Each level is about 15 minutes, so you can get through the whole game, but this really has a feel of that 90s classic arcade game, and I think it looks great. You know, the graphics are a bit dated, but again, visually upscaled today with today's modern technologies on a modern screen, it certainly looks good enough. So Ghost Squad, if you haven't picked this up, you can pick this up really cheaply. Recommend that you take a look. At number 4 is Link's Crossbow Training. Now, people might find this to be an unusually high ranking for this game, but this was the reason that Nintendo built this peripheral. This is what the Wiimote is to Wii Sports, for example, or Duck Hunt is to the original NES Zapper. This is why Nintendo bought this, and it's great to see a Nintendo IP. Again, this is much more suitable for younger gamers if necessary, so I really enjoy this one, and it's definitely got a soft spot in my heart. So Link's Crossbow Training is at number 4. Next up is Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles, and to be honest, there's not much of a difference between Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles. But for me, the scenarios that this game takes its levels from, mainly Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica, and 4, are just games that I have better memories of. And you can see here the visuals, the aesthetic is very Resident Evil 5-esque as well, which personally, whilst it had a completely different tone, was a game that I really, really enjoyed. This, in the same vein as Umbrella Chronicles, is actually a really, really deep game that you can really get into, and probably longer than a Call of Duty campaign. It's a lot of fun, loads of very different environments based on the previous games. If you haven't played this one, you can see here, it really looks gorgeous and is really a game that you should be taking a look at.
Anyone here?
So number 2 is the frankly crazy House of the Dead Overkill. Now this was the first House of the Dead game which didn't release in the arcades, and therefore is a much, much deeper experience on console, but it still retains that crazy shoot until they stop moving House of the Dead-esque gameplay, which I really enjoy. Not only that, but the caricatures are just off the scale. This is a sort of crazy 80s B-movie vibe with crazy designed zombies, and quite frankly, I think it won a record at the time for the most profanity in a game. You can't help but have a smile on your face when you play this game, which is quite amusing given the insane violence and gore, but the game is absolutely brilliant. If you've never picked this one up, then you need to try this game. If you're a Lightgun fan and somehow you've missed it, you absolutely need to check out House of the Dead Overkill.
Ooh, I look forward to it. Gotta go, honey.
So on to the number 1 game, and I've gone with Dead Space Extraction. Now this took the 360 PS3 game, put it on rails, but actually gives you still a surprisingly deep game experience. And what's more important here is you get a fantastic story and all of the varied weapons. Turning your gun sideways invokes the secondary fire mode, just like the main Dead Space game, and it looks superb. I mean, I think upscaled, it's very hard if I was to put it next to the 360 version to really see the difference. The visuals really are some of the most impressive on the Wii. This is not a Lightgun game with a Dead Space front end. This is a Dead Space game through and through that the developers have very, very thoughtfully created a Lightgun game around, and it shows. It's incredibly polished. It's really exciting to play. There's genuine jump scares and genuine tension when you play this game. So this is why it's my number 1 pick if you want to pick up a Lightgun game for the Wii. I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, like and subscribe. Something a little bit different. But yeah, if like me, you don't want to spend your time with Sinden Lightguns and getting things set up and just want a quick pick up and play experience, then definitely consider using a Wiimote. As always, have a great day.